Welcome to Hammered with Cars, presented to you by Troll Patrol Racing
and Johnson Recreational Toys.
I'm TJ.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is our guest,
Kyle.
There you go. As usual, we don't have any kind of agenda, but we've got a guest with us. And Kyle's been racing with us since 20... Is it 20...
About 5 years.
5
years, I think, since I got my red Z.
It was 2018.
Whenever I bought my Z, that's when I started racing about 2 weeks after.
I know it was 2018 because I didn't bring my 300ZX to the AutoX School. The reason I didn't...
No, it was at the school, but you didn't run anything.
You're right.
Because you were broken.
Yeah. Yeah. The tune wasn't exactly figured out at the time what it was. But you're right. That was 2018.
Yeah.
Yes, it was 2018.
I think I owned my Z for like 2 weeks
Yes.
at that point.
Yep. Basically what happened is Kyle posted on one of the Z31 Facebook pages, found out he was in Wisconsin. I said, hey, come check out some autocross with us.
Yeah.
And he showed up at the AutoX School, and he's...
5 years later,
Immediately
we're still friends.
Yeah.
5 years later and lots of money later.
Yep, that's
Worth
How it goes.
that's
Like
how racing goes. That's
they
exactly
say,
right.
I got bit by the bug.
Yep.
And it infected me fully.
So I guess, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Z31? Everyone obviously... Not
I know a
everyone.
little about yours.
The 60 people that listen to us know my Z, which is a 1986. Yours is a 1987.
Yeah, 87. Originally an NA car. Bought it out of a buddy's backyard for like $700. Didn't run technically, but put on the trailer, brought it home, threw a battery in it, tightened up some vacuum leaks, and drove it off the trailer. So it was a pretty good deal for $700 to just drive it off the second I got it home, right to a gas station, and drove it to work the next day.
And you pretty much, I mean, the way you drove it off the trailer is pretty much how you came to the AutoX School.
Pretty much. I think
You probably
I put the lowering springs in it that I had
Okay.
laying in the trunk of it, because it had some lowering springs in the trunk, and then threw on just some mismatched whatever wheels and tires that were good enough to drive, that weren't dry rotted, and showed up with big dent in the fender and whatever worked just so I could make it there. So pretty much toss it together, try and race it.
Which is basically leaps and bounds better than TJ's first autocross in his Z.
What do you mean? The first autocross in my Z was an absolute success.
It was, so was his. But
Yeah, I didn't break anything that day, so
I didn't break
successful
anything
for
either,
me.
and everyone was thinking I was, because we went to Road America.
Oh, really?
This
For
is
your
right
first
after.
one?
Yes, this is right after we did the swap.
Well,
We
they
did-
had better grip back then, because that was before they redid
This
the
was on
kart
the
track.
parking
No, this was on the park. So
is on the paddock parking lot.
yeah, so you know
Really?
you know where the like store is.
Yeah, right across from there.
Yeah,
That's
it's like up that hill.
Oh, they did it over the hill.
Yeah,
in
so
that
like there
little
was literally the
rectangle.
cliff. You know, the cliff
Yeah.
off where like I think it's where all the trailers park and stuff like that.
And
That's where we
now-
did our autocross.
That's a small lot.
It was a intricate track.
Yeah,
But
we're not gonna get going there.
no, it was definitely tough to get going, and we actually had a few people leave before the end of the day because they got
Really?
frustrated with the track. Yes,
It was-
I ended up
oh,
winning.
yeah,
I ended up
that's
winning
right.
my class because there was someone that should have beat me,
But they
but
just
they got
left.
frustrated and they left.
Jesus.
So I won my class.
One by default.
But the joke was we just got done with the swap. Shocks, springs, brakes, everything. Pretty much garbage. I mean, the brakes were bled properly and everything, but the brakes were just whatever was on the car. Springs and shocks were
Not
shot.
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
the thing looked like a boat, you know. Just
30 years old.
Oh yeah, yep. And
I got saggy butt to begin with on
Yep.
those cars with the suspension design.
Yep, there was actually we did a video of the 300ZX twerking on the stop sign. But the everyone was joking that weekend that my car was going to break. That was the big test because this was
First
when
weekend
That's
out,
when we were
yeah.
leaving from like here, so it's a 3-hour drive there. and everyone was joking it was my car that was going to be broke, and my car wasn't the one that broke. The
It's
car
right.
that broke is the one that has been probably the most reliable out of everything.
Since then,
Is the
at least.
SRT4, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think I've ever seen them have problems other than, I just want to rotate the tires because they're getting a little hot in the front.
Right, I
Or
think
disconnect the sway
I think the
bar.
biggest issue he's had at a track day event since then was
That radiator cap that failed at Blackhawk Farms.
right, and that's not even that big. What was more of an issue that day was the his ignition coils
Oh,
were going out. We kept blowing out spark,
sure.
and still he was like, "Yeah, let's co-drive it." Just send it, whatever.
That thing
Just
is
ignore the misfire.
Yep,
That thing has been beaten on and co-driven
Yep.
so much.
and still
It
I
takes
had the
it
fastest time in that car
Yeah.
at Blackhawk Farms out of us, so
for now.
I'm the best.
Jeepers.
If we put you in a real car with Aero, what could you actually do?
Well, we know what I would do. Go off the track. 300.
Yeah.
I constantly just went off the track.
How many times did you have to go off to get yelled at last year?
Apparently, I went off the track 5 times in one session. I don't remember
Apparently.
5 times. I think it might have been, and I may have. I'm not saying I didn't.
He doesn't count because it's just been so many.
Well, the only thing that I can think of is it was a very dry day, and if you clipped corners,
Oh,
because some
yeah,
of those
there's
rumble
some
strips,
dust that
it would
would
just
come
kick up dust, and I don't
It's
know if
that
they were
corner-
calling that in as
Corner 4 by the curbing, everybody
Yeah.
was clipping up so much dust over there.
right. So I don't know if they were calling it in as off track. Maybe I did spin out 5 times. I don't think they said off track.
Now, you didn't spin
And
5 times.
No, I didn't spin 5 times.
You did go
Um,
off track right in front of where we were all
Yes.
parked.
So the last session,
I'm like, he's going to have to change his pants after that. You were like 2 feet from
Yes.
the wall coming in backwards.
the last session, I did spin out once before that, and then I spun out right before coming off track.
Yeah.
The reason I spun out though was not because of driver error, is because I blew the head gasket, which then pressurized the radiator hose, and then the radiator hose gave out and just dumped coolant.
Yeah, didn't you blow that hose in half?
Damn.
We were like, oh, we'll go home, we'll get a new hose, it'll be good to go.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It
it
would
wasn't.
be event number
Didn't-
2 that
yeah.
disease were down for blowing head
Yeah.
gaskets because mine did the exact same thing.
Yep.
But I had the worst hose to replace.
But we still did the same thing. I
Yeah.
ran home and got an extra part,
Yeah.
and then it didn't work because that wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
top tip: if your Z31 blows a radiator hose, you probably have a blown head
You're
gasket.
done.
Just
Yeah.
saying.
Because that was my very first event at Blackhawk Farms. I go out, and in my very first session, it's like driving the car. I'm stuck behind a slow Corvette for a while. Spent about 3 laps, 4 laps stuck behind him. Finally get the blue flag and point by. So then I got a couple of free laps because the guy in front of me was way quicker. So I'm just going for it, and then I notice, suddenly my car is getting a lot of understeer, and I look at the temp gauge finally, and it is like 160. I'm like, oh, or not 160, 260. 260, and I'm like, this is not good. I need to
Good.
pull into the pits immediately. And as soon as I got off track and into the pits, just cloud of coolant smoke came out of it. So it probably started to split that hose on track and then fully blew it
Yeah.
apart as soon as I got into the pits. Because it turned into a cloud of white the second I got off.
Yeah.
In a frantic of, oh crap, I'm about to blow the engine.
Right.
So got it back, started cooling down, found the hose that was blown open. I think we sent you or you. Who did we send to go get a hose?
Wasn't
It
Wasn't
definitely
you.
would have been me because no one else would have known where to find it.
I think it was
Because
you.
it was at my house, man.
I think we sent you back to
I
your
don't have
house.
an organized
Yeah.
parts bin. Just to have parts
I think we
bins.
sent you back to your house
Yeah.
to grab another one. So we got another hose, threw it on quickly so I could make it in time for the third HPDE session of the morning, and then start the car up. Last second, they were making last call for me to get out there for the final call to run my last session, and it's just misfiring. Misfires. All right, maybe it'll clear out because it's got water in it. Rev it, put the helmet on, start driving it out to the lanes, and still misfiring. I'm like, all right, it's not running right. we're just gonna turn it around. Something's badly injured.
Yeah, I remember you left and you came back and we were like, ooh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I was rushing to the line like maybe it'll clear up, and it was just like still poofing white smoke, still misfiring. So we just put it right back on the trailer. I think I made. They were like 15-minute sessions. I think I made it 12 minutes.
Do the
My first
one.
day. So I spent.
Great way to spend $180.
Yeah.
Right?
Between the fuel for the car, the truck, the entry fee, I spent a few $100 to spend 12 minutes to blow my head gasket the first day out.
Yeah, that's.
It's a hard way to learn, but that's how you learn that, yes, replace your coolant hoses, because I think that's what did it. I think the hose blew and then
I don't.
the head gasket
I
blew.
know. I think the head gasket blew and then it blew.
I don't know,
because
because I wasn't running a ton of power. I had it on like mid-boost level only. I don't know if the chicken or the egg
As
came first.
repetitive for it to happen in both of our cars, I think that's way too. I think the head gasket blew.
I don't know. I want to think head gasket and I want to think hose, because I'm thinking head gasket but pressurized hose, or it could have been a 30-year-old hose that blew, because I was understeering on the track, so I don't know if it leaked first or blew and then leaked.
Easy way to find this out is if you have your heads.
I gotta check
Checked.
them off yet. Yeah. Well, they're
Even-
gonna be warped because they got hot.
Well,
Yeah, that's possible.
260 is
no,
pretty hot.
they shouldn't. They shouldn't be warped
Maybe.
because we have 13 head bolts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of head bolts for how
Oh,
small that
yeah,
head
that
is.
is a lot of head
Yes. So it should not be
13.
My
warped.
Rover's only got 10 bolts.
Right.
It's a V8.
When
Yeah.
when me and my brother were rebuilding my engine, he's like, Jesus Christ! And he works on industrial stuff, and,
And we gotta
he's
do-
like, they gotta. It's just
Yeah.
like there's no way you should have a warping issue with these.
Yeah. 13 head bolts. You gotta torque them 4 different
Right.
times. So 13 times 4. There's a lot of time with the torque wrench on
Yeah.
Right.
both heads.
Right.
And like with
So,
the,
like
when,
with your engine where you had that screwed up head, do you think that that's just a
I don't think.
inconsistency in manufacturing?
I mean, depending how many
I don't.
times
I
it's
don't. I
overheated.
wouldn't call it an inconsistency in manufacturing so much as a tolerance difference in manufacturing, because my heads actually came off Mercury Villager
Sure.
engine,
Oh, that's right. The
and I
band.
could, and technically, using a actual straight edge and everything and feeler gauges,
Yep.
technically it's within spec. So if you were just running
Yeah.
the stock boost and stuff like that, it probably would be
Or
fine.
no boost.
Or no boost, like the Villager was.
Yeah.
And there could have been a difference tolerance that Ford had than what Nissan had.
Sure.
So I don't want to say that the heads were screwed up. I mean, I ran them pretty much a year with no issue.
Yeah, so they were probably fine if they're within spec. Then
I just think
the
it was.
gasket
I
shouldn't
think.
be blowing. From
I
being
honestly
warped.
think what happened is it just was. Because that when that happened too, it was 4th of July,
Mhm.
so it was a
Pretty hot.
hot, humid day,
Yep.
and that
Every
was the
day we've
first
gone
session that I
racing.
went out there and I did like the full 20 minutes. And I know maybe it sounds like if you're experienced with racing cars and stuff, 20 minutes isn't very long, or 20 minutes is
That's a long.
a lot to
session.
ask of just a basic.
A relatively stock
Stock.
OEM
Yes.
factory engine.
Especially
Yes.
knowing you, because you are like full out aggressive driver, so you were probably 20 minutes of balls to the wall, or was this still when you were new? So you're like,
No. This was not. This
No?
was I was
you were.
I was
balling
going for
it.
it.
Yeah,
And then
so
that's
20 minutes of just beating the shit out of a car takes a big toll on the cooling system when you don't give it any cool down laps.
right. And
Which
so
is probably what I should have done with my car, but I was just going and not thinking about it because I'm like, this is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing, so we're just gonna go fast.
Right.
And if you never look at your temp gauge, you lose a lot of money real fast.
Yep. And I had been looking at my temp gauge too, and that's what would surprise me is I had been looking at my temp gauge because I was following Nick in his C6.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, he passed me, and then he kind of slowed up on the straight, and then he kind of kept going through the corners. I was like, oh, let's see if I can keep up with him through the corners.
Yeah.
So I was trying to stick with him, and I was watching my temp up to the corners after the straight, and I was fine. Had no problems with grip or anything. And then I went around that last corner, and then the car just went around. And when it went around, the first thing I did is I looked at my temp gauge, and here it is, sitting in between the 260 and the center mark or whatever. And I was like, Uh-oh. Something changed.
Yeah, I got a good video of that. You probably browned your pants at least a little bit
Do
coming
you
close
have a
to
good
the
video
wall.
of that?
Yeah, I got a
Oh,
good video.
man, I've never seen it then.
I sent it to you, but you probably forgot
Oh,
it.
man, okay.
I was sitting there like, oh man, he had to have pooed himself at least a little bit, coming in with a few feet of that wall. And it's tires and then concrete. So
Yeah.
if you hit it, it's gonna hurt a
You're
little
not really
bit.
thinking about it. You're just foot on the brake.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Once you hit the grass, you can't do anything anyway.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
basically running on an ice rink.
But anyways, so why don't you tell us what you got done to your 300ZX instead of us talking about everything we've broken on a
Yeah.
300ZX.
The list is longer of that, I feel like, too.
This is
It's common.
ad for reliability in the Z31.
I mean, we're learning from our mistakes. They get more reliable each engine we put in. So. the newest version of
That's
mine.
not a good selling point.
Maybe for
Each
you
engine
it's
we
not,
put-
because you put in so many more engines
That
than
is
me.
not true.
Or at least cam-wise, you put in so many more cams than me.
That is true.
Which I guess on cams I have some 270 megas from Iski that I added at the very end of last season because I was like, well, let's see what the stock ECU can do. It's running the boost, it's running the bolt-ons. Can it also run everything with some bigger cams? And that's where your failure points have been for a couple of times. Two cams broken that were aftermarket.
Cams.
Well,
I don't blame the
Regrinds.
cams.
I think it was you not knowing.
It was me
Over
over tightening the
torquing it
timing
Yeah.
belt. It was because
You think that's
Just-
what it was yet?
yeah, without a doubt.
TJ told me that he didn't look in a service manual. He just tightened it as tight as it would go.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely on you with.
I don't know if I tightened it as tight as it would go, but yes, I did not look at the
You
service
didn't do the
manual.
90-degree twist even.
I don't do the 90-degree twist now because I was like
As long as
messing with it.
yeah.
It's like I feel like I can turn it 90 degrees.
as long as it's not whining when you start it up, you're usually good to go.
No, the method I use now is I take a socket over the center of the belt and I stick two 20-pound dumbbell weights over it.
Oh, really? So you weight it first and then tighten it with the weights and make
No.
sure it's not like.
Well, no.
That's
Tighten
actually
it
the
up.
spec. Is
The
it supposed
spec
to
is-
move a certain
The spec
number
is
of
22
inches?
pounds half inch,
half
or like it's roughly that.
deflection.
And
yeah.
so I
yeah.
use 20 pounds and roughly a half inch as my spec, and I
Seems
haven't
good
had an
now,
issue.
yeah, not since
So
then.
I'm not. Good. And actually, the first time I did that and took the car out was the car cruise, the COVID cruise
Oh, sure.
that we did with the Madison Club.
Yeah.
And I think we got to the end point where we ended up splitting off from you guys.
Mhm.
And when we got up to that point, we had like another 100 miles before I would know it
If you
worked
were
or
gonna
not.
break the camshaft.
Because I had done the like mileage count of, okay, where did the camshaft break?
Where is it
Where
previously?
had it, where had it previously broken?
On the
And it was
way.
literally like we were on the interstate, and I was like, well, good
Here
news,
it
Tanya, the
comes.
cam hasn't broken yet, so we've probably fixed that issue. And she was like, Jesus Christ.
I wasn't trying to worry about that this whole time,
Yeah.
but now I am
Yeah.
that you mentioned it. Yeah, thankfully I've had good luck with mine, put my cams in, and did I race it? I think I did one.
You did Shawana with them.
Yeah, I did one autocross day with them, and then after that I did a dyno day at ASM
Yep.
with Andy Smedgard, and that went really well because I was very surprised with my numbers.
Because what did you end up getting? You got
I made 310 wheel horsepower and 354 foot-pound of torque.
okay.
So I made a lot more than I expected and ended up breaking the record for stock turbo, stock ECU, stock injectors.
Do you have a fuel pump in there, or is it the stock fuel pump?
Walbro 400 because the stock
Okay.
fuel pump can't support the extra fuel pressure.
Right. Okay.
So I made sure to put a big fuel pump in it. At
Because
least.
that'd be the only differences that you have over the stock fuel
Yeah.
system is the fuel pump
Yeah.
and the fuel pressure regulator.
Otherwise, yeah, upgraded regulator, upgraded pump, but stock injectors, stock ECU, which stock ECU is so capable on these cars. I never expected
It's got
it to
a
be
big,
like
wide
that.
map.
Yeah, the MAF sensor, as bad as most people think they are for speed density, because blow-off valves and stuff, works really well. Even with a blow-off valve with a mass airflow, it really doesn't seem to be a big issue on these cars, at least. Not like Subarus where you put a blow-off valve on it and then they blow up.
Well, to be fair, it is like early 80s EFI.
Yeah, it's
which
really...
I know I think we've talked about in the past, where it's like, that's where the whole, like, if you do an air intake and an exhaust, you'll add power.
Yeah.
Well, you did, because
we really did.
They had such a general map.
Yeah.
And then the mass airflow sensor would pick up those improvements and just dump fuel for it.
And it really picks them up. So I don't know what the map would actually look like if you looked at it, but yeah, it's got a wide range, because we never have to worry about running out of range with the mass airflow signal, no matter what we've done. At least not with what I've done. I've never had to worry about it. With a stock turbo, I don't think you can get it out of range unless you pump it up to the point where the turbo just turns into a hot air blower.
Right.
Which at that point, you're not going to make any more power anyways, because pumping hot air in is going to make nothing more than cool air.
The only way you could is if you had like a water to air intercooler.
Yeah,
and you had it like
really
pumping through a dry ice cooler or something like that to really chill it down.
But sure,
that is not really the best option for racing. Everyone's like, yeah, just put in one of these, and it's like, I'm going to need to bring about 10 bags of ice to an event, because if we make 8 runs, I'm going to run through 8 bags of ice trying to cool it down every single run, versus running an air to air and just put a water sprayer on it and give it a couple pumps of water spraying after I get done running back to the pits.
Yeah.
Because even a water sprayer gets that intercooler super chilled. Even on those hot days, just chills that thing out, ready to go for the next run. So it's kind of a water to air. Either garden sprayer or hooked up through the rear
or just a
windshield
couple water
sprayer.
bottles that you
Can't say I haven't done that. There's been a lot of times where I forgot the garden sprayer before I hooked it up in the washer sprayer, where it's just grab a pen, stab some holes, spray it down. Gotta try and squeeze everything you can out of it.
And your car's able to handle at least quite a bit of abuse.
Oh yeah.
Especially since after that first Blackhawk Farms event, because you got it put back together for I think
I got it
2
back,
weekends later
for
at
MIS.
And you did your morning runs, and then I showed up in the afternoon because I had some stuff going on in the morning.
Oh yeah.
I showed up in the afternoon, did 4 runs or so. I can't remember if it was 4 runs.
I think you did 4 runs, and then we're like, are we just going to co-drive this last
and
session?
then it was just like, come back and co-drive it. So it was 12 runs, basically.
Back to back to back, 2 driver
which is probably
lane.
It
did
did
get a little bit
advantageous for us than anything, because I think your brakes
The brakes were
really kicked in.
Well, after your first 4 runs, I think the brakes finally heated up enough that they were useful for making the runs after that.
Because what are you running for compound on that?
I got the Carbotech XP10 pads, and then the StopTech rotors. So I got XP10s front and rear, which are a track-oriented. So for Blackhawk, they're amazing. I make a warm-up lap out there where I just brake hard into the corners, making my first lap out, and then those things are amazing. The rest of the session, you can hammer on them as hard as you want, and they don't seem to fade, so I'm glad that's what Joel recommended. Because he runs those on his S2000.
Okay.
So Joel Krantz has the same pads. He's like, I love them. I've never had issues. I don't run cooling ducts or nothing. So I'm like, your car is a little bit lighter than mine, but I think I could probably run the same thing and be fine. I have ducts if I needed them, but the cooling ducts I did add to the front of the car went to the radiator last year. So I could, maybe that was my issue. I didn't have enough cooling flow, which I think that might have been a big issue of why I blew the head gasket. Because the way the cooling system is set up was not optimal.
It's possible because just because wherever your coolant sensor is located doesn't say that it's not overheating. Doesn't mean that your coolant isn't 10 or 15 or 20 degrees.
Well, I had it in
a
factory location for the factory gauge.
Which doesn't necessarily mean that it's good.
Yeah, it's close enough.
I would agree that the factory gauge is probably not. Well, it's not precise because it's like 100 degrees, this is where you want to be. It doesn't give you a temperature 260 degrees,
Yeah.
and then it just kind of wavers in between those. You
The
know?
factory gauge isn't
but
accurate.
the sensor is right in the upper intake manifold.
So it's in between both of the heads, so it's getting flow between both of the heads. So it should be a fairly accurate way. The actual ECU gets its not coolant temp, but engine temp in a dry socket, and it's in one of the heads. Yeah, driver's side head. It's got a dry socket.
The coolant
So we
temperature
don't
sensor.
we don't have the
yeah.
ECU seeing anything different. It sees it in the head. So we're not sure what would be more accurate, but I know where I can easily tap for coolant in the lower intake between the heads. So that should be fairly accurate.
Yeah.
And then I had my actual fan.
You have
sensor.
a temperature gauge too now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a temperature gauge. I have the factory Volvo fan set up, so everything runs automatically. But I think now that I have done more research with cooling systems, so with the way our cars are set up with the radiator slanted way back there, and you have your intercooler slanted closer to the radiator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so his is closer, so it goes through the intercooler right to the radiator, and I had mine as a front mount, and there's a lot of space between it, because if the radiator's here, like this, and the front mount is like here, like this, there's going to be a lot of turbulent air, and it doesn't really get to flow from intercooler to radiator very efficiently.
Sure.
And the fan's got to work extra hard, but it can only work so hard to cool it,
Right.
especially when you're going at speed like that.
Shout out to Frankie at Killer Fabrication for making my mount on the
Yeah.
intercooler, so it is like that.
Yeah, I think that might have
the
been
other part is my
issue.
intercooler is smaller than yours.
Yeah, yours is
and
like
so
half the
it only
size.
covers about half my radiator.
But I think the turbulent flow was a big issue, so I added ducts to the front of the car and tubes that went around the intercooler and straight to the radiator to try and get more airflow. I don't know if that was the problem, if it was a hose, if it was a head
Right.
gasket. I'm like, there's a bunch of different reasons that my car could have blown that head gasket overheated. So I'm like, we're going to cover all the bases. I got the new engine in, ARP studs, fresh head gasket, extra cooling, and it hasn't had a problem since then.
Right.
But this year I revised the cooling system. We're changing the radiator. Well, not the radiator, but I did change that because it was leaking after my intercooler hose clamps were rubbing over it for a few years.
Again,
And then it finally started to leak at the very end of this season.
and
So
add
good
for
timing.
reliability.
Yeah.
The Z31.
So we changed it out to my other radiator, and I'll repair the other one and use it again. But we're actually gonna have the intercooler slanted the same right in front of the radiator, and then add ducting straight out of the front of the car. So that'll help force air through the intercooler and force air through the radiator. So I can use those ducts probably for cooling the brakes if I'd like to. Which, if I do go to Road America or if we go to Gingerman, maybe it's needed, maybe it's not. Blackhawk is usually the hardest on brakes from what a lot of people talk about. I
Over
hear-
Road America?
Well, Road America, you at least get that long
I was
dragway
going to say
straight.
the places that have the highest braking also have the longest straights right
Yeah.
before them to cool the brakes down.
Because if you're doing those dragway straightaways, you got a long time to cool the brakes before you brake again, but you will get high brake temperatures when you are on the brakes.
Huh.
I'm not sure, but I hear Blackhawk. People say a lot of the time that it's really abusive on brakes because you have two straightaways and a lot of corners between them.
I'll have to
And
look
you do
into that
have-
because I've been like, nah,
Yeah.
I don't want to
You
do
do
a
have
Road
two
America track
big,
because
heavy
my
days.
brakes aren't good enough for it. But
I don't know what
be.
what my buddy Sam runs on his BMW, but I don't think he's had issues with his brakes either.
because I think
The fluid is more important than the pads, I think, too. Because
Well,
if you
I've
boil
got good
fluid, you're
fluid.
screwed.
I got
But
the best fluid.
I think your
It
pads
dominates.
Yeah, I think your pads would be degrading. Wouldn't be as bad as the
Saved you
fluid
today.
boiling.
Because I know
Oh, that's right. You got the
Dominator.
G-Locks?
Oh yeah, I got the G-Lock R8s and then I
Yeah.
run the Amsoil Dominator.
The
brake
fluid. Weren't you saying something about the brakes feeling weird, though?
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm telling him. He should have got a better compound.
Or he's just got to get used to them. They may just
Yeah,
maybe
like
different
I don't know,
things
like
he
I
has
got,
they had
I think I
before.
got used to them over the year.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like
I mean,
I don't say much about it because I don't know.
Yeah.
I ran EBC yellows and then I went to these.
Yeah, so you don't really have a great.
Which an EBC yellow
difference.
is really like just a super aggressive street pad.
Yeah.
Right,
It'd be
right.
like
But it was
the Hawk.
great for autocross because it was like boom,
Yeah,
I'm working
immediately. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was quite there with the R8, but everyone I've talked to is like, and I'm looking at the specs that they have for it, unless it's like a 40-degree day,
Yeah.
it should be working
Mhm.
pretty much
Better.
the way you would expect it to.
Yeah, because the R8's should be better for autocross because it doesn't take as much heat to get that bite.
Right.
Versus the XP10s, it's like it takes at least 2 runs of running and then me trying to warm up the brakes to my run and after the run before they
Right.
really get that bite. But even still, they're still squealing the whole time.
For all I know, it could be the calipers that are all wonky. I mean, I rebuilt 3 of them that are on the car.
I mean, as long as they're
Because the
not
4th one I
leaking-
rebuilt didn't work, and so I had to just replace it with a remanufactured one. So who knows? Maybe I'm running 3 wonky calipers and 1 really good one, and that's my problem. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I never drove your car this year, I don't think, because you were.
Yeah.
It
no,
only
we
was
didn't-
out for half of the season.
Well, in the one Road America event, it ended up running pretty late. That
Was
when
it?
we were
Yeah.
done, we were done.
I think last year I drove it at the Road America
Yeah,
one, and
yeah.
I was like, "You drive this
Yeah,
thing?
because we did
The engine is doing this.
Yeah.
The seat is an SRT4 seat, so for me, I'm little and I don't really fit in it. I'm like, how do you were way too quick for a car that everything is so wonky, and you had the Hoosiers too.
I did.
So you
I
could
did
just
have the Hoosiers.
turn in the car.
Yeah, that's
stuck.
right.
And I'm sliding all over the seat. I'm watching the engine do this out the hood because of that hole in it. You can see it torque.
God, those Hoosiers.
I remember pulling into
Hoosiers
the
were
pits.
great.
I was just dumbfounded. Like, how are you this quick in this car? Everything I have observed, it is
I'm just
not
that
up to
good.
the quality of mine.
It's just that good. No, but that day I think it was me, you, and Ryan. We
Yeah.
did like musical chairs
we
in
all
each other's
swapped
cars.
because I'm like, I want to see what yours like compared to Mizey because he's quicker than me, but his car doesn't look as good. So I'm like, let's drive and find out. And I'm like, okay, it drives pretty good with the Hoosiers, but like, you can't get over the engine doing this.
You can if you don't look at it. That's. I mean, why are you staring at? You should be looking ahead. That is a big thing in racing. You got to look ahead. You shouldn't be looking at.
That is the
stuff in
most
front of you.
distracting thing ever.
Ah.
Because I have solid mounts, so mine's never gonna torque.
To be
the
fair,
car torques.
To be
instead.
fair, mine does have solid mounts.
It
And
does now.
It did. No, it did.
Oh
then.
wait, you had loose bolts, didn't you?
I did, and I don't anymore because and it wasn't the bulls.
No.
It was the nuts. The nuts would loosen up. So I like
Nuts, bolts,
this
same
year.
thing.
This year I put lock nuts on it, and I
Yeah.
haven't had an issue this year at all.
Yeah, I got nylocks on mine, and then when I swapped the engine, I swapped it over to the shorty aluminum mount so I could drop it down
Okay.
to clear the strut bar.
Gotcha.
But I definitely had loose mounts before because I remember one year at Road America, between running, I was like, we were looking at an oil leak on yours, and I'm like, oh, let's see if mine leaks in the same place. And I'm like, oh, the motor mount bracket connected to the engine has 2 loose bolts on it. Let's throw my gloves on and quickly fix that before I lose bolts out on the track and have no driver's side motor mount. All because you had an oil leak. I actually got to fix some bolts before I lost them.
There you go. To be fair, I've had that same issue, where we've had some motor mounts
Yeah.
bolts back out. And
We work on our cars a lot at events, but we do make it to the events.
Right.
Unlike somebody sometimes
Yeah.
running shit over, getting flat tires.
Yeah, all them flat tires. Jeepers, which I always made it to the event. It was just late.
Yeah.
just late, really late.
Yeah. For what it's worth, the one flat tire put me in Reed's 350Z.
Oh, that's right. You love that thing after you were thinking
Yeah, you
about
came
getting
off the
one.
train. Oh, I need to buy one.
I need to buy one of these things.
It's
Yeah, you were
just so
Did it-
good.
Did you beat him in it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, you beat him in his own
I
car,
did a
which
hero
is-
run on the first
best
run,
thing
and then I
ever.
didn't get any faster all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is.
They are
Yeah,
well
the-
balanced cars.
The time he put into researching the suspension and stuff
Mm-hmm.
is well worth it because that car is
Yeah.
very, very quick
Yeah.
the way it is. I know that when I drove it, I really, really really enjoyed driving it.
Yeah.
Now, imagine how much quicker it would be if he didn't leave his 200 treadwear tires sitting on the car through the entire Wisconsin winter to turn into hockey pucks.
Which I don't know if he took them off this year.
I was just gonna.
I bet he didn't, because the last 2 years we've talked about, he did not take them off, even though he was told he should.
Yeah.
So I bet they are still on the car over these past month of negative weather.
Right.
Did so and so take their tires off the 350Z?
He's definitely going to say
Question
no.
mark?
Either he's going to say no, or he's going to say, "What did you think?"
He'll
because
just.
I bet we know the answer to this already.
Well, I know before.
Should just FaceTime him. That's the aggressive way to find out.
When the temperature dropped below 32 finally,
Yeah.
he had not had him off.
No.
They're
So
probably
I don't
not
think he
off.
has had him off.
Because once it's cold, you don't want to
Yes.
work on stuff outside. You just want to not work on your car. You want to be inside where it's warm.
Damn.
Even with my insulated shop, going out there and turning on the heaters and trying to warm it up, it's like I'm really not that motivated to work on it because I still have to be cold while I wait for the shop to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's warm, it's not so bad.
Right.
Once you get moving, then you're like, all right, let's work for about 2 hours and then I'll go
Right.
home.
Yeah.
So I can get
it's something.
little
It's amazing what
chunks
you can
done
get done in
in a
an
couple
hour. Even
hours, yeah.
I know that's a big thing I try to do during the week because it's harder for me to do stuff on the weekends now. Is just take an hour just during the week, no matter how
Chop
tired I
it
am.
away.
Just go and do it because you'll find that you did all the piddly stuff
Yeah.
in the hour that you didn't think you were going to do. And
'Cause
then
you're
the
like,
next day
this
you come
takes
out
10.
and you got done what you wanted to get done. And it's like, well, geez, if I would have waited till the weekend, I might have just I might have spent an hour doing that piddly stuff and said, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. Now it's like, all right, I can actually do the big jobs.
Right.
Which it's finally starting to warm up in Wisconsin. Tomorrow's supposed to be like 53.
I think you're wrong. I think
it's
In
supposed to be
Fond du Lac,
like
it's
65.
I was gonna say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Fond du Lac is
Mr. Up
53.
North. Yeah, no, it's.
We might actually be warmer then.
Yeah, tomorrow is supposed to be 65 degrees.
Down here.
It's supposed to be. No, this is over.
Janesville's down here pretty much.
No, I don't. No, yeah, that place. But yeah, it's supposed to be the same down here.
So it's supposed to be 50s, almost 60s in Wisconsin tomorrow. So it is time to start working on shit.
Oh yeah, well,
Springtime is coming.
I've already started.
Yeah.
I had all the parts and everything, which you guys saw in the last
Yeah,
podcast.
my clutch came too.
Did it?
It came
Oh
this
yeah,
week.
yeah, yep.
Because a while ago, with all the COVID stuff, Spec was having a hard time getting parts out. Like getting my girlfriend's Beetle ready, getting parts for that. We got her clutch in time, but the flywheel, they just didn't have materials to manufacture it back then. Because this was a couple years ago when COVID was like really hitting. So they didn't have materials. We ended up getting a Fidanza, but we got our clutch in time.
They didn't have materials.
That's
they
what
had
they were
materials,
saying.
but they were like, we don't have enough materials
Yeah.
for your one thing
For your Beetle.
that no one else is ordering.
But thankfully, Fidanza has everything we needed, so we ended up getting a Fidanza for her car too. And then both of them are running spec clutches with Fidanza flywheels. And I got my new clutch, so hopefully.
Are you gonna break in your clutch
Yes.
this time? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because you didn't last time.
And that's
I
a new
was.
co-drive too, because we're like, am I spinning tires because it's a bumpy track, or is my clutch slipping?
Right.
I did
But I
not
do remember asking you, like, did you break in? You're like, no, it doesn't need to be broken. And
Yeah.
I went, okay.
Yeah. I
And that's-
looked up what it should be, and they said, oh yeah, if you just do some slipping, taping it on a test drive, cool it should be all right. So I was like, all right, I'll go around the block, give it a few regular like slips, and then do a couple power runs, and it ran fine with the power runs, but it did not hold up to excessive abuse autocrossing the next day, and it started slipping pretty quickly.
Yeah, Blackhawk Farms and everything.
Yeah, Blackhawk, I turned it up to maybe 35% on the boost controller out of like the normal 55% duty
So what were you
cycle.
running for boost?
I don't remember the boost numbers, maybe 12 at most.
Okay.
Out of the 14 it usually runs.
Right.
Because I think the duty cycle I was able to get to about 35 and it would start to slip just a little bit on the straightaways when I was putting down full power, and I was like, leave that 35, because if I don't floor it right away, I can ease into it and get power. And I think I normally run it at 55% duty cycle on that boost controller, and that would get me about 13, 14 pounds of boost.
Right.
And that would be good. I'd like to run full power at Blackhawk this year, so new clutch.
Just break it in.
Drive it to work for a couple
750
weeks.
miles. Yes.
Hopefully I can get that much. If I drive it to work
750 miles.
Miles is such an ambiguous thing.
I know.
Because if you just go on the 4-lane for 750 miles, it doesn't count.
They want you to do start, stop in the city.
They want you to do 750 miles like below.
Well, not like
3,000 RPM.
Yeah, not like highway driving. They want you to do city driving where you can disengage and engage the clutch.
Disengagements and heat cycles.
Because if you just clamp it once and go down the highway, it's not going to do anything. It's going to stay in the same spot.
Why would it do anything?
It's not moving it. Because if the disc is just...
You don't know that.
Just spinning it around in a circle.
You don't know that it's not slipping a little bit.
It shouldn't.
It should not at all.
If it's the break-in period, why wouldn't it?
It shouldn't. It shouldn't slip at all.
Why is there a break-in period for piston rings and stuff?
Well,
because they have to slide up and down a whole bunch of times and get worn
into place.
That's why the clutch...
That's why you have to engage and
what happens when something is worn into place?
Does
it move when it's worn into place?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're doing 750 miles below 3,000 RPM...
It shouldn't move.
I'm here to tell you right now that if your standard single disc or twin disc or triple disc clutch just slips driving down the highway, it's garbage.
Problem.
It's not good.
You have to define slip.
It shouldn't.
Any sort of percent plus or minus.
So any sort of movement while you're doing break-in.
It shouldn't.
Just driving down the highway?
It's junk.
It shouldn't slip
not
down
even
the highway.
like a micromillimeter.
Yep, not good.
That thing should clamp
Just
hard.
Driving down the highway? Absolutely not.
Even for break-in.
If you look in the manufacturer's instructions, they say city driving, not highway, because they want you to get that disengagement and engagements. Because then you cover more surface area.
I don't think it actually said anything about city or highway driving
it does.
For my Excedi.
Well, that's a stock clutch. They're like, who cares?
Well, they can say, who cares? But, who cares? It's holding up.
Yeah. But the clutches, so I had the South Bend 6-puck, and they were like, well, it's a race clutch. It shouldn't need a full break-in period other than a few slips. So that's what I did, and I guess it needs a full break-in period. So this spec clutch, it's another 6-puck ceramic. We're going to do a full break-in period just in case, because I don't want to have, $400 clutch, throw it out the garbage within the first event.
That's why I bought the $80 clutch. Because if it goes out the first event, I go,
Yeah. Yeah, so this time I'll probably drive it to work for a couple of weeks, get it broken in before the first event, because I'm not doing a whole lot on my car that I won't be able to drive it soon. We're just waiting on some suspension goodies. Other than that, we'll be good to go. The LSD
sorry
needs
to say
go
suspension goodies, but I don't want to get...
That's why I'm just saying some goodies.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah.
It's not quite released, so we can only leave
He's already
it
had
there.
enough problems.
I know. The new website is much better with those problems released. So we're waiting on some of that stuff, but until then, it's just revise the intercooler mounting for the cooling system, get the LSD in.
Yep, that's the big thing.
Finally have an LSD this year. That was a big problem last year at Blackhawk, even without full power. Even at
I know when I
hit
drove
that curbing and do a burnout.
When I drove your car, that was the biggest thing I noticed is the open diff over an LSD.
Although the nice thing about running an open diff for 5 years is at least I learned momentum driving, because you can't just power out of it if you're going to do a burnout.
Right.
So you really got to learn how to go in fast, brake hard, and try and keep a smooth line.
Try and keep the car.
So that handicap for so long to the point where it actually makes me slower, I think it's a good learning point. Because if I had an LSD from the start, probably never would have learned any of that stuff. If you could just power out all the time and use the power instead of momentum, you're not going to get better in the long run. So
now the trick is to not unlearn it.
I know. But the stock LSD only has
You'll unlearn it so quick because
you could
what you'll do is it's like, I can get on the throttle right away, which means I can get more boost sooner. And
well, realistically,
that ends up being the big thing is how how can I stay in the boost
all the time.
all the time?
Which around Blackhawk, there's a lot of corners where I'm like, I could stay flat through here, I bet, but this inside tire is just burning away, so I gotta feather it.
Right, and I guess I'm talking more autocross where you're really bogging down.
Yeah.
And it's like
there's a lot
you
of
get into a
times
corner
there where
and you're maybe throttle on where you usually wouldn't be with something that's doesn't have that little bit of turbo lag that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we want to get on it quick and get that thing spooled up, which that factory turbo for me lights up so quick and then just burns that inside off. But the stock LSD for the Zs, for the 87 turbo, when they came finally with a factory clutch LSD, it's only got 2 clutch discs.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So it's not like it's a full aftermarket loaded clutch.
That's got, I think, like 3 or 4 on each side.
Yeah, and I know same with the Kaz and Tomei and
a bunch of them.
Whatever.
Quaves.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, Quafe just does the helical LSD.
Are they? I don't know what they are. I just know a lot of people spend some money on them.
Every time I see that name, that's what.
Yeah, the factory LSDs, it's got 2 clutches and then some big spacers. Somebody used to make an upgrade kit to turn it into a 6 disc.
Oh, okay.
But that was years ago, so I don't think I can find that anymore. If I want to do something similar, I'd have to find a company that would be willing to make custom parts to make it a sick. Spec, maybe somebody would. Comes down to how much money are you willing to spend.
Right, exactly.
Because if I wanted, I could send them...
You want a $3,000 differential?
Yeah, right.
The amount of money it would probably cost would be the amount of money it would cost to
get a Kaz.
Or less to buy the Kaz.
Yeah.
And they will set up a custom diff for you, too.
Right.
You can call Kaz and they will be like, okay, this is what you're doing. We could set it up specifically for your application for way less than it would probably cost to have custom-made parts for the stock diff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but custom-made parts is so cool.
It would be cool.
Would it be better? I have a custom-made diff.
Yeah. But would it be better than buying a nice aftermarket unit?
Oh, it won't be better than what
probably not.
My shit is good.
Your $500 OBX.
Yep, that's their...
You know,
that's the slogan, OBX. Shit is good.
As much as people bag on cheap ones, that thing works pretty well.
It does.
It's just a little clunky.
Up. Yeah.
Other than
to be fair, I think if it's clunky,
you know it's working.
Well, no, if it's clunky, it's not because it was built clunky. It's because the way everything works in there with the spring washers to apply pressure. It is. It's how you've applied the pressure because
it's not a torsion or helicals are.
It's a helical diff, but then it has bevel washers that act as essentially springs, applying force to each wheel. So that way, because the problem with the helical diff, if you don't have any kind of force inside the diff,
like if you lift a tire.
Yeah. Yes, if you lift a tire, it essentially turns into an open diff. But then as soon as that tire hits the ground,
back locked.
Yes.
Does it stay locked
so
if
it just
you're on
jolts
throttle,
the system.
at least?
What?
Does it stay locked if you're on throttle?
That's the whole point of the bevel washer.
So that keeps it locked
is to keep
as long
it
as you're under power.
Locked to a point.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of it, is that you can change the orientation of those bevel washers by how they're set up, whether you have it concave to concave or convex to concave kind of thing.
So you can tweak it adjust at least how you want it a little bit.
Yeah, you can literally adjust the pressure. Because what happened when we rebuilt mine the last time, and this would have been after running it for, what was it, from 2015 to, Jesus, I don't even know if I want to admit this.
How long did you run it?
2020?
It wasn't, not 20, maybe it was. Because I remember you being like, I got a clunk and I can't figure out what it was.
Yeah, no, it was 2020.
2020 or
the same year I
2019.
rebuilt the engine. It was up to 2020.
Because you had a clunk that you couldn't figure out.
Yeah,
exactly.
I had a clunk I couldn't figure out. And when I took the drain plug out of the diff, the oil came out along with a couple
carrier bolts.
Yes.
Silver Surfer
heads.
Oh, just the heads?
Yes, and literally what had happened is, and the thing with OBX is it's cheap ass Chinese made shit, and not all of the holes are drilled and threaded to the same depth in this specific part. I'm not going to say all OBX,
At least this one.
but in the one that I specifically had, they were not all drilled and threaded to the same spec. And so when I had put it back together after doing this rebuild kit and everything, I had torqued the bolts, but really what I had been doing was not torquing the bolts had bottomed out. I was literally just twisting the head a little bit. And eventually what happened is after the case had essentially moved in and out, stretched those bolts and broke the heads off. Now, to the credit of OBX, I think I had, out of 12, I had 6 bolts left.
50%.
Yes, and the diff was operating perfectly.
It was only because you changed the fluid.
And you say 50%, but to be fair, they had one bolt that they had. I don't know what they put in the threads of that bolt, but I literally broke that head of that bolt off before even opening it up for the repair kit. So technically, I only have 11 of the 12 bolts.
Because one of them is broken and you just didn't even bother extracting it.
No point. When you can run the thing on 6 bolts.
11
when you put 11 on it,
11 out of 12
the
ain't
factor
bad.
of safety is great, you know? Don't even worry about it.
Have you checked it since to make sure you don't have another one in
there?
there?
No, because it hasn't clumped. But when we did realize that and we put it back together, I did put it back in the car, and it was clunking, but it was clunking like you had
it sounded like
a welded diff. No, it was like a welded diff.
Oh, after
because that's what was
it?
There was so much pressure
now
on those bevel washers.
Tension.
It was not the correct tension, much tension.
Because you had it.
That it was just your wheels were always locked. Yeah. And so I took it out, took some of it out, rebuilt it, put it back together. And I'm not going to say it's the correct tension, but it will act like an LSD, and it doesn't clunk.
Yeah.
And I went, that's enough for me. Yep. Yeah. After you've torn the diff out 3 times in one season,
you finally figure
when
it
you
out.
finally put it in, you're just like, all right, we'll leave it. Another day. That's still another day project. I have no desire to tear that thing out anytime soon, as it's working the way it should be.
As long as the stock clutch LSD works for me, I'm going to run it. And the benefit with at least running clutch LSD is if you do lift the tire, you don't have to worry about that unlock because the clutch packs stay.
Right. Well, neither do I.
They stay working. Now you got yours set up that you don't got to worry about it.
Right.
So it's like, all right, it should stay good. It should stay locked. I'm hoping I pick up a couple seconds at least around a few tracks. There's a few courses we've run with hills like Shawano. You finally got out to there at the end of last year.
That's a fun track.
It is. I've been trying to get all you guys out there.
I wanted to come up there.
If you are anywhere in the Midwest, it is well worth the trip up to US Air, Shawano, Wisconsin.
Shawano.
Shawano.
Shawano?
Shawano?
Shawano.
Is it Shawano?
We say Shawano up north in Fond du Lac.
It's got an A.
No.
Yeah, there's an A in there.
We say Shawano.
It ought to be Shawano.
But US Air is an amazing track.
It is.
It's nicknamed.
It's the best. Like the Road America go-kart track is a pretty good track, but Shawano takes it to another level. It is like a big track. It is the medium track. It is that perfect cross between something that where someone who's done autocross for a while is looking for something a little bit more extreme, but they don't want to go to that really big track.
I think it's
Shawano is that perfect mix. It just you can really push your car to the limits as far as getting into some of those higher gears. I mean,
third gear. I was using third a few spots in that track.
Right, and
it's about a minute and a half course even for our autocross too.
Right, it's not like a regular autocross in the sense where you have a bunch of gates. It's more of like you have corners that the track has, and then they've put slaloms and a few gates.
We don't even do slaloms.
Didn't they do slaloms?
No, they used to do a slalom on the backstretch going down the hill, but since I've been racing up there at least, they got rid of the slalom. Yeah, there's no slaloms, just gates.
Gates, okay.
So we treat it like a road course. We just put up cones for the inside apexes because if you're hitting the cones on those apexes, you're going off the track and then you get a DNF. But it is strictly set up as a mini road course.
Right.
And the elevation changes are amazing.
And then it was a total blast. I mean,
yeah, the best
it's
part
well worth going up there for an event. If there was one thing you were going to come do, if you're going to come do an autocross event in Wisconsin, it'd be Shawano or MIS.
I think the best part of Shawano is at least the elevation change.
The elevation changes are good. I'm looking forward. MIS, for certain reasons, is gotten into an unfortunate place to where it's located. Because of where it's located and the residential issues around that has made it unfortunate. And this year, some of the events that we are of the local group that we race with, they're moving to the Alliant Energy Center, which I think will be much.
Where is that at?
In Madison.
In the middle of Madison.
So it's in Madison now?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So they're moving some events from MIS to there, or just adding events?
Well,
no, because we still have 2 MIS.
Oh, so we still get a couple, but not as many.
We've had 3 in the past.
Yeah.
But what
you're
don't
right.
have
And we got
is
rid
we
of
only
Jefferson.
have 1 Jefferson,
really?
and we're not going to the Dells. We're not going to Dells.
The Dells track is kind of.
There's a Ho-Chunk.
There's a Ho-Chunk, but not a
Dells Raceway.
Ho-Chunk isn't bad. The
Ho-Chunk
Dells Raceway is a really rough.
But I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the Alliant Energy Center because I think that
is that a flat lot? Yeah.
Yes, it's a very flat lot.
So
I think it'll be very reminiscent of what Miller Park
Milwaukee
used to be.
Where you blew your head gasket before.
No. Technically, I did not blow my head gasket racing at Miller Park. I blew it on the way to Miller Park.
In the parking lot of Miller Park.
No.
No, before
No,
that.
I knew I blew it beforehand. Because I kept turning up the boost. I was like, come on,
On
give me a
his
little
way
power,
there.
give me a little power. And then on the interstate, and then, psh, and antifreeze went all over my windshield. And I went, oh. And instead of just heading home, so I didn't have to worry about it the rest of the day.
Did you co-drive with somebody at least?
Yeah, I co-drove Reed's car.
Yeah. At least you did get to drive.
And then I drove my car about halfway to Johnson Creek. And then Mike Roble pulled over and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, well, my phone's dead. Can I use your phone to call my wife? And he's like, yeah. So I called him. I was like, can you meet me in Johnson Creek? I really need you to meet me in Johnson Creek to just help me the rest of the way home.
Because, I need lots of water.
Well, yeah, I'm going to need lots of water, but like, I need you to just be there with me. So that way, so I can make sure I get home. And it was literally like every 15 minutes, just stopping, refilling, stopping, refilling.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of leaving Blackhawk Farms when that half-hour drive took us about 2 hours.
I know.
And
the worst part about it
stopped a lot.
Was we finally got to my house, and I told my wife, I was like, "All right," I was like, "I know it's been a long day, but I was like, I've got to at least offer him a beer because he followed me all the way home." And I was like, I don't think he's going to take it because we've literally been driving, like, to get here. Half hour. It took 2 hours to get here. And I went out there and I was like, do you want a beer? And you're like, no, I better get going.
Yeah, we spent a long time getting to your house. 3 different times pulled over. We got some good pictures of it at least.
Yeah.
So. What are friends for?
Right, exactly.
When we both
it's not like we could have thrown my car on your trailer.
Yeah, mine was on it. I didn't want to pull it off again and load it up again.
To be fair, we considered it, and I was like, no, put your car in the trailer, and then just follow me home. Because we did think it was all right.
We thought it would be fine for the drive home, but then it turned out as soon as you get on the highway,
no,
not fine.
Actually, staying on the interstate would have been a better idea.
Yeah.
But the interstate was closed because there was a crash up ahead. That's why we turned off as soon as what we did.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken us as long. That was part of the problem.
Yeah, it's fun times. We used the truck to bump start it because we got tired of pushing it. We tried to...
Oh, that's right, because your starter bendix blew apart that day, too.
My starter completely fell apart. Yeah, let's not forget that.
So, you couldn't even use the starter to get running, and
that's why we didn't really know the head gasket was blown.
Oh, yeah.
Because we couldn't even restart it.
Yeah.
We couldn't start it, and then
so we just was like, all right.
We were like, starter's broken, it's done for the day.
Which you guys were like, well, we'll jumpstart you and then take it on the track. And I was like, no, because if I go around the corner and I spin out and I kill the car, I'm done. Yeah. Like, there's nothing I can do.
We took the starter completely out at that point.
Yeah, which thank God I didn't do that because I obviously would have been like, oh, I've got way bigger issues than a starter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a good thing the starter broke then that day so you didn't completely mess up the engine. Yeah, we got tired of one person trying to push it down the highway that eventually it's like, you know what? I got a truck.
It's got rubber bumpers on it.
Yeah.
My bumpers already scraped to shit. Just fucking push it.
We push started them enough. We got good going.
Push it real good.
We didn't mess up the sticker that much on the bumper.
No, we
either.
didn't.
The license plate on my truck survived.
Got through
It was
it.
a good way to get home.
sticker off.
What?
You didn't rub your PETA sticker off?
No.
It was the
No, it was the
CF.
CF Sports,
Yeah.
which isn't even around anymore.
We did get heckled a
It's
couple
now
times.
completely different. Yeah, we did get not heckled.
Not heckled, but
Yeah, even Kyle
Kyle
stopped by.
He kind of
on
stopped
the
by.
back,
Yeah.
on a back road of Janesville.
Yeah.
It
We're
wasn't
like,
even
what are you
it
doing
wasn't
here?
even on the interstate. You know, it was like
He doesn't even live over there, does he?
I know.
I think he had somebody with him.
Yeah, he did. I don't know if it was.
He
his-
kind of stopped to heckle.
Yeah, I think so.
Just make sure we're all right. Once he knew we were all right, he's like, all right, now I can make fun of you because
Yeah.
you're okay. You're close to
Yeah.
home. And
Yeah, because when he did that, it was like
we were almost there.
yeah.
like
the-
10
I
minutes
drove the
away.
rest of the way home.
I mean,
from
he
that
drove all
point.
the way home.
Yeah.
But yeah, because he stopped the second time we stopped. Who was that? With he's got the V8 Saturn,
No, it's not a V8.
wasn't it? I thought it
Nope.
was LS swapped.
Nope. It's not a V8. I'm almost 100% positive it's not a V8. And
I
I
don't
don't.
remember his name now.
I have to go back and look.
The Silver Sky?
No, it's
White-
not. No.
white.
It's a white
one.
He's
Yeah,
from
no,
Water.
that's not a V8. That's
No.
just it's
He-
just got it's a stock engine
Something.
that's just turbocharged.
Yep.
Holy hell.
Yeah. Because he's in
He
Watertown.
didn't get to race it that day because he showed up late, so I never actually got to see it.
Right,
go
but he
anywhere.
did heckle us. You're right.
Yeah, he stopped by.
When we stopped
Make sure
right
we're
shortly
good.
after the ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. We stopped shortly after the ramp where everyone was exiting because the road was closed.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
literally everyone just saw us sitting on the side of the road going go around.
Open your coolant again.
Yeah.
Boiling water bottles that you
It
happen to
was,
have.
like, and that, when it happened in the instant, I was like, man, what the hell is going on? Maybe I just didn't, you know, bleed it right or whatever and stuff. And then that second time, I was like,
no.
fuck, blew a head gasket.
So if anyone wants to know who breaks more, it seems like we have a lot more stories of you than me.
It's because I race more.
Not since I started. I think we race about the same. You just race.
That's where you're wrong.
You race all with Madison, but I'm racing with Madison and Fox Valley. So if I'm not racing with Madison, it's usually the same day I'm racing up at Fox Valley now. Because I go to closer events most of the time. If it's closer, I'll run with Fox Valley. And then run a few events with Madison because I still like running with the club. I'm not going to be able to log anything by memory.
If I remember correctly, I did 15 events last year.
I don't even know how many. I never remember, but I usually do.
Yes. If you include high-speed autocrosses and everything, I think I did 15 events. And I do exactly the exact same face you're making as I went, oh, really? Because the best I've ever done was 2017, and it was 18.
Yeah, there was
that
one
was a
year
lot
it was
of
like
events.
back to back to back every
And I had
weekend.
a kid this year.
Yeah.
And you only raced half the season. Well, in your car,
In my
first
car,
half you
I only
co-drive.
raced half the season, but I
Yeah.
did race because I went to the first high-speed autocross with you and Ryan.
Yeah.
And on the spot with
Yeah.
Ryan, I was like, "Hey, can I co-drive your car?" And
I
I was
mean,
like,
are you
okay.
counting those events where you only got like 10 minutes on the track?
"Yeah, I am."
I mean, to his credit, his second day when he didn't blow his car up, he made it through all morning long, and then the distributor issue,
That is right.
and then
We
we
talked
found
about
out
that.
the
Didn't talk about that
crossover.
either.
Yeah, the distributor
Set
issue,
screw on the distributor rotor.
backed out.
and then once that
You
was
guys
fixed,
were about to start yanking valve
Oh
covers.
Yeah, I
my
know.
God, we were
gonna dig
I was like,
into
wait a
it. We
minute,
were
maybe
checking
you should
mechanical timing.
Just pull your cap off real
Yeah.
quick and just make sure there's not some jack.
we were about to pull the distributor off, and
Yeah.
then you said that, and it was
Yeah.
like, "All right, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense."
And then that was fixed promptly after figuring that out. And then you made, what, 1 or 2 runs and you're like, wow, this thing is really low on power?
No.
Because
I think it was one run,
runs.
and I made one run, and I was like, something's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think...
And I don't think it was as bad. But then after that one run, it was like, okay, something's really wrong.
I think those
but it was
backfires.
the distributor bolt backing out that backed out, and it backfired so badly it blew that pipe.
Blew that crossover.
Yeah,
that crossover pipe was.
Otherwise,
blown.
it would have been fine.
You were like, the car runs fine, but it makes no power and it's not worth driving.
Because I remember too. Then driving home from that event, I had what was it? There was a guy in a. I don't think it was a C8. I think it was a C7 Corvette. He gave me like the thumbs up, and I was like, I was like trying to like, go for it, but it was like, I've got a blown tube. Like, I don't know what you want.
It doesn't make any power.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, I upgraded mine, so I shouldn't have to worry about that for a long time at least.
You upgraded yours?
I have the Pucker factory fab from Cameron.
Yeah, I thought about doing that this year.
It is a nice piece.
Yeah, I thought about it, and then I just...
You got plenty spares.
I've got... No.
I'm
out of my spares. I'm on my spare.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, my spares seems pretty good.
It is a nice piece because it's not like the mesh bellow.
Right.
It is just a regular stainless steel bellow. So it should be a lot stronger and last a lot longer.
Right. Yeah.
So
all right.
I haven't had issues with that on mine. I've done enough bolt-ons with the car that I think reliability-wise it should be all right. Power-wise, with the new clutch, I should be making full power this year. And that should be good to go with the LSD, that I can start to really squeeze the car's potential, especially with the aero at Blackhawk Farms. I think that should help me a lot over your aero brake.
That's the only place it's useful at, but...
Yeah. I don't
know if that's really true.
I don't know. I haven't had an LSD for autocross either.
The aero?
So.
Oh my gosh.
I think for autocross you might have the better setup with the aero brake, but I think for Blackhawk Farms...
It's not an aero brake.
It's an aero brake.
Spoiler. That's what it does. It spoils the air. It just turns it on itself.
Spoils it into a brake.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Compared to the wing, because the wing's more efficient for downforce, but yours is more efficient for slowing the car very quickly.
Yours is more efficient for downforce if you're looking for peak downforce
at speeds.
Mine's more efficient for downforce.
Slow speeds.
Yes.
Because the saying goes, the slower you go, the bigger you need your elements to be.
Right.
Which is
why the SSM cars have
gigantic wings. So I've thought about going dual element for autocross, so you can swap out the dual element at autocross
and then go to a
single element for Blackhawk, because it doesn't need that much downforce in the rear. Because last year, going around that right-hand carousel section, I could plant the throttle and didn't really feel the rear end of the car.
The right-hand carousel section.
I'm trying to think of what corner it is. I think.
Oh, you're talking.
If they count that as corner 2 or 3. If you're coming from the straight,
you have the first turn, the second turn,
right, left, and that long right-hand kind of a carousel-ish. Because I was able to plant the throttle and hold it to the floor once I was confident, and didn't feel the car really wiggle at all. So I think even with an LSD and the power turned up, I'll be good to go. And I'm not running full angle on the wing. It only needs about 5 degrees
to make
good downforce.
You could add a larger, is it a
gurney flap?
Yeah, okay, it is a gurney flap.
I have the mid-size gurney flap on it now. I can still go bigger, but I don't think I need to, because I'm not even running that wing at its full angle of attack that it can run.
Right.
5 degrees is usually the recommended starting point. You run too much angle and you just get too much drag. Don't run enough angle and it's not doing anything. I think about 5 degrees has been the sweet spot, which is also their recommended starting point with those wings for downforce, along with not too much drag to slow you down.
Okay.
So I've been able to plant the car, and it seems super stable with the front rear aero. So I don't think I need to add anything for Blackhawk so far with the power levels that I've been running.
So you've got stock turbo.
Yep.
270 cams.
Yep.
Intercooler. Radiator.
Fuel regulator, upgraded pump, Maxima front-facing intake. which I think helped
that
a
doesn't
lot.
do anything. It does.
If it didn't make more power,
it definitely does more than the 300ZX, just because the 300ZX comes from the one side.
It's so long. So even if it doesn't make necessarily a lot more power, the throttle response was an immediate noticeable difference on the first test drive with it.
Oh, okay.
Because my shop has a nice little straight road in between empty fields. So I'm like, all right, new intake, let's go make a hit on it right away, and immediately noticed the throttle response was way better, and it felt like it made more power. So even if it doesn't, the throttle response alone was worth the upgrade on the Maxima front-facing intake, getting rid of probably 2 feet of piping and intake going around, and it doesn't go over the hot exhaust again.
Does it have shorter or longer runners than a stock one?
It's the same.
The exact same. The only difference is the intake goes from being
it's
wrapping around the back to right off the front.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the only difference, and that's just because in a Maxima the engine is turned sideways
for front wheel drive.
For whatever reason they decided to do that.
Yeah.
Idiots.
What else do I have on that thing besides fan and sensor upgrades so I can monitor AFRs?
Where's it gonna go from there? I had stuff.
We're talking about mods.
I know.
What do I have?
You got a short throw shifter.
Yeah, short throw
shifter.
So much nicer. Than
9 Lives Racing wing.
Yeah, it is a 9 Lives Racing wing
with custom mounts.
Yeah, custom mounts.
They don't make mounts yet,
but they make great builders kits,
and they probably never will.
No, they
no.
Won't.
I mean,
for the 60 people watching this, they never will.
They might. So I messaged him at one point. He's like, I mean, if you want them, you just got to say please, and if you can send us all the info for the R&D, it would help. Because if I get the car, the fresh chassis, 3D scanned, come up with some ideas, show them where things are possible, they could make a kit, or if I just save the information and anybody wants to message me, they can get it, because they will build custom mounts for anything you want.
Okay.
You pay enough money and they will build it.
I've got comments on that. Off channel though.
Yeah. Yeah, if you pay enough, they will build it.
Right.
Anything you want is possible.
And then you've got the LSD now. And you've been running.
Here comes the tires.
Yep. I heard about last time you guys were...
My favorite part.
The only thing I was wondering is...
I love that sticky, icky.
The only thing I was wondering was Ryan getting delam or was he getting blistering on the sides?
Delamination.
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
I don't doubt he was getting some blistering, and I think Ryan
I don't
would
remember
attest to that.
He was getting blistering.
I guess maybe we need to have him on next time.
It was
because
literally the outer face of the tire was peeling away from the corner.
Yeah,
part.
so blistering on the sides. So on his outside edges, because he doesn't run a lot of camber, does he?
Yeah, he has a lot of camber.
I don't know how much. At least not as much as us, because we get so much from the
I would have to double check with him, but there's a reason he runs custom control arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a lot of static camber, but he doesn't get a lot of camber gain through suspension roll.
Which is the same as us, because McPherson struts generally don't get a whole lot of dynamic.
Currently, we don't.
I don't think we can really get a lot regardless, just because the travel of it, with how linear it is.
To come. Oh no! The rate at which it changes will never change.
Static camber, we can get as much as we want.
Right.
I mean, even
I just think things are going to get a little better.
I don't know if we want any more camber though. I think with the last event that I did run,
I think there's going to be some geometry changes.
Yeah.
That are going to help us get better.
I don't think we want more than what I have, because the 4.5 at the end of the season, I think that was a little too much.
4.5.
I couldn't remember my camber number.
4.5 up at front?
That's what I set it to, yeah. Or like 4 point something.
I was running like
2.5,
2.7 maybe at the front.
I was basing it off of,
if I remember correctly, I might have been running 3.
Yeah, I was basing it off of what another company told me the camber addition would be on their adjusters, the roll center adjusters. They said it would add -2 degrees, and I already had 2.5 degrees, so I figured, the car's been running great at what should be -4.5, so That's what I set
So
it
you
to
didn't actually
again on
measure
the
it,
new
though?
alignment.
Did you measure it though?
Not with the old stuff. If I would have checked the alignment
okay.
before adding some extra stuff,
Because we
then
have the
I would
same.
know.
We have the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they didn't actually add -2 degrees, and after setting it up to what it should have been theoretically based on numbers, it's more than what it should have been, what it was before. So I'm definitely going to be changing those numbers because I think that's way too much comparatively to what it used to be. I think the numbers were not as accurate as I thought.
Okay.
So I'm definitely taking away and not going to run -4.5. I think that's too much. I think that was part of my issues at Shawano.
That is way too much.
Because Shawano felt slippery, and I think that could have been a part of why.
Yeah.
That definitely could have been. Yeah, well, I remember that you and
It did feel
Matt
more
were both saying,
oversteery,
you guys
though.
were both like, "Oh, Shawano's slippery today," and it was my first time being there, and I was like,
This place is fantastic.
"Feels great to me." Like,
I think both of us were running on 2-season-year-old tires, too.
yeah, no, you guys
and
were,
and
and
the drifters were just there.
Well, for all I know, it could have been a slippery day.
It felt slippery to
You know
us.
what I mean? It could have been, but it was the first time I had been there. And like you said, the drifters had just been there,
And then it
they're
rained,
and it rained that night.
The rubber,
So
the oil
everything
all
was coming
soaks up.
Yeah,
And you had new or almost new at least tires, only a few events on those Federals.
they're great.
And they're 295, so they're bigger than what we had.
I know. I'm not contesting.
I think his new
just
tires.
saying.
Yeah.
No,
I think-
I'm not. I agree.
think our
It
old
probably.
skinny hockey pucks just weren't up to the task that day.
Yes, hockey pucks. This is what you have. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure it was probably slicker. There's no way for me to notice.
You didn't have
You
it.
don't have
Like,
any
because
frame of reference.
like when you say
yeah.
a track is slick, I'm comparing it to the Road America go kart track,
Which
and it
is
was
slick.
not that.
That is.
Yeah.
But it was not that. Like
Yeah.
it just.
Versus, we ran there early springtime in the season. The track was great.
Right.
But this time we're like, we just can't get out of it what
Right.
we used to. So we don't know if it's tires or just the track conditions were different, but we couldn't get out of it what we wanted out of it.
Right. Now our buddy
I don't
Matt
know.
that we're talking about is Matt Pavlitt from Left Lane Design with his I think it's a
Miata.
K24 Miata that he has. Yeah.
He also has a 9 lives wing, so
Yeah, he does.
He
have
knows
nine-
what's up.
Yep, 9 lives wing. Yeah, he does.
efficient.
All about that Wang gang.
Oh,
all
yeah.
about that wine gang.
Very
Not me.
efficient.
I'm all about that spoiler broiler. Ooh, I don't know.
I have
Whatever.
to get one of them
It's an aero
wangs for
brake.
my truck.
Yeah, you need the wang.
Mhm.
Not the broiler, the wang.
Not the broiler.
We will convince you one of these days. I think once I beat you at Blackhawk, you might be convinced.
All right. Well, when I'm dead, then you can convince me.
First, your car has to make it through the event to find out.
Whoa!
I was really hoping to have a
I
showdown
know.
this year, and you never showed up to that.
Last year, you mean?
Yeah, last year.
This year?
This year,
This
you better
year.
show up
Well,
and not break.
if depends on what happens. As far as other events that we've talked about.
Well, we should
Memorial
be able
Day-
to make that first event.
Well, it'd be whether or not I have my car tuned for it.
Oh, that's right, because you.
But the other thing is there's an
gold.
event that's the next weekend that may have me go, yeah, I'm not going to do a high-speed autocross event the day before.
the next event.
An eastbound.
And
Oh,
yeah.
That's
Eastbound and down.
I'm like, what do you mean next
Rolling
one?
up-
I don't
rolling
remember
up-
another one right
Yeah,
after.
there we go. Rolling up and try whatever. Yeah.
It'd be a good test day at Blackhawk.
And I know
at
I won't
least,
be
to
there
make
for
sure
4th of
you won't
July.
break.
I know I won't be there for 4th of July.
Vacationing.
Yep.
I'll have to go to that one so I can get an edge on you. Some more seat time.
Don't edge me. And
I'm
then
gonna be
actually
at
the
Road America
the
for
last
4th
one
of
that we
July.
did last year
Memorial.
that would be around King of the Mountain.
Oh, what would it be?
Yeah.
Which?
So that one is up in the air of what would happen.
Labor Day, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's not
Is it
Labor
Labor
Day.
Day?
It's the
Memorial
last.
Day
It's
is
the
the
last
first
weekend of
one.
August.
Isn't that?
So it's the 25th through the 27th of August, and that's when they'll
I
do
never
the.
remember.
They won't do it Labor Day because so many people do family events on Labor Day. If they're going to do a high-speed autocross event, it'll be the same weekend as King of the Mountain. Guarantee it.
Which it was last year because we went and
Yes.
did high-speed autocross and did
And then we got-
commentary.
Yes.
And we got heavily drunk.
Yes. Well,
You guys,
You remember-
I passed out early on that night.
passed out
right
early.
after the event was done.
I don't know if we ever got a chance to tell you, but when we went to PRI and we talked to the guys at UMI,
We talked specifically mostly to the announcer.
The guys that were there.
yeah, and they recognized the Troll Patrol name.
Yeah.
He's like,
I just thought
I
he was
didn't
like,
know
at
if
first
you
I
got-
thought you guys were like a bot spamming, just spamming us with a
Because there
bunch
were
of
so many
bullcrap.
comments between
Well, he was
all
just
of
like,
us.
Troll Patrol, like, troll. It's gotta be
It
a
makes
robot.
sense.
And he's like, it's nice to know it's just a couple of jabronis.
that's what he said. No, he's like, I don't know what this is, if it's just a couple jabronis with a computer just trying to give us a hard time or what. But then when he's seen that people from their core group
Yeah.
of people that,
We're
participate
chiming in with what we were
UMI
doing.
events,
Yeah. It's like, no, we're real and we're just from Wisconsin and like
Doing
to
what we're
drink.
doing.
We figured, hey, we can turn this into a drinking
Right.
game, and we were planning to watch it anyway, and
It worked.
this is a fun event to watch, and we have alcohol. Let's play a game.
Right.
And see how many other people we can get to join in and pass out drunk by the end of it.
Turns out
A lot.
Yeah. Many other people commenting were like, I don't know if I can keep up with this, and we didn't know if we could either. I think we'll have to
By the end, it was
revise.
like, oh my god, please let it end.
Yeah. I think we're going to revise the rules for the drinking game this year so it's not so much just downing your drinks.
Yeah, we're going to revise the rules by be there in person. Then it won't matter, It just,
Yeah.
All
All I
right.
can say is it's
So-
a good thing I didn't have
So
to
Frankie
drive.
was here a couple days ago.
Yes.
Or actually yesterday. Frankie was here yesterday.
Yeah.
And we kind of went over some of the stuff on my truck. We're thinking about possibly doing forward-facing headers with an X-pipe in between the radiator and the engine. And then just single pipes either out the front
Bowls
of the
out the
bumper,
front,
which
yeah.
would be awesome. Or
No, it wouldn't.
single pipes just back out the back.
You need to go out the back. It's aerodynamically.
Hey, if you point them out
Coming
and
out the
facing
sides of the
backwards,
bumper?
that's going to make you go forward faster.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought you were talking about running them out front.
Not
No,
like
not like
facing
out
forward.
the front, like out the sides of the bumper or
Oh,
the
okay.
fender.
I thought you were
Like
talking about running them out
bullhorns?
front. I was like, what,
No.
what are you talking about? Like, this is
No.
the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
No, I don't need an exhaust brake. Exhaust air brake pointing
Yeah.
forwards.
Hold on.
Hit the throttle as you brake.
It's double air brake because
Yeah.
you have the air force coming from you in the front plus the exhaust coming.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I don't know why they didn't do this on the Bugatti.
Yeah, you
But
could-
anyway, so we talked about that, and we possibly talked about just whether or not I want to do short headers for packaging reasons, or like a mid-length,
Up
where
the
it's a
front.
longer header, but then goes to a collector before it goes down under the frame rail, or if we wanted to do a full-length, real long header, where you actually have all four runners go all the way under the truck and get going straight backwards, and then have a collector.
Jesus.
Or out the front.
Right, or just
Yeah, I don't know how
Something
much
obnoxious.
space you really had for packaging in there.
A lot.
A lot. Between the frame
It's a
rails
pretty
and the
small
engine.
engine. We can go look at it.
yeah, we
After
got it
this.
out in the truck.
But
It's
it's-
actually set in the chassis right now too.
Yeah, because I haven't
So-
seen it in person, so I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know how much space he really has, but
So it's
Maybe
very
there's enough.
similar to like an LS or a small block. So it's actually very similar in width to an LS or a small block. The reason that I have a disadvantage is because an LS, the exhaust
Makes more
ports,
power.
yeah, I know. I was thinking that too.
but the exhaust ports are closer to perpendicular to the plane of the block, whereas with mine, they're like perpendicular to the ground.
Oh,
So,
so it doesn't really have that angle to start with
Yeah.
to point them down. You really have to
Drive
turn
it
that
down.
tube at a 90 down
Yeah.
to begin with.
yeah.
Well,
before
do you know
you
why
can
they
even
designed it
go.
that way? For turbos.
Yes.
You go,
You put some logs on it and
Mm.
turbo packaging.
Mm.
Can we
That'd be a
someday-
benefit of doing a
Actually,
front-facing
to be honest,
manifold.
if I was going to see the S10 do anything, it's not turbo. I'd like to see it supercharged. Just because it goes...
That would be
Yeah,
a benefit of front-facing manifolds to do turbo in the future.
That's true.
Because you can easily turn those front facings into
just do some
one
forward,
or two.
Do some forward facing headers and then just V-band them so that if I ever want to do turbos,
that would
just
be.
And what is it? It's a 4-liter.
Yeah.
Stick some Garrett T25s on them.
Yeah.
And you'd have
a little boost.
But you'd have really good response.
Yeah.
The T3 would be better than the T25.
You could do the T3 on them, too.
Which is more what I'd be interested in is throttle response and better mid-range power.
Small twin.
Well, I've got a spare T3. One.
I have many. I've stocked up.
I know. You bought one of mine.
Don't tempt me.
He bought one of mine.
I'm going to port one and see what it does just for shits and giggles, maybe.
Well, I had Arizona Turbo.
Mine. Your T3, T4.
Yeah.
I wish they made upgraded wheels. I'd love to run one.
There is an upgraded compressor wheel.
But in a stock housing.
Yeah. Oh, no,
because you have a different housing for the compressor.
Different housing for the compressor.
Stock exhaust turbine housing. Yeah, I wish I could still find, I don't know if I can, but maybe I could get a custom option or something close enough and bore out the stock housing for the compressor a little bit, but I don't know if we can get an upgraded compressor wheel or not anymore. I think they used to have them available at some point.
If you were going to get one, it would be through Arizona.
Yeah, because the rules say stock turbo. Doesn't say anything about modifying it. Yeah. So that might be...
That's the gray area to play.
Yeah, that might be worth it, but I don't know if it'd be worth doing all that work to any of it to make any more power. If
you know what? That's a really good point, because I have a buddy with a lathe and a CNC, and I have a stock T3 that I have done nothing with.
And all you need to do is swap back to a stock T3 to be in the same class as me again.
Below you.
You sure?
If you're going by SCCA rules, you got cams.
Well, we don't have that for Midwest.
Yeah.
Then you'd be in the same class for Midwestern Council.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I'm already beating you in those classes, so I'm not worried about that.
You haven't even made a run this past year in your car in those classes.
I ain't worried about it.
Technically, I beat your Z last year in high-speed autocross. Because your Z made 3 runs total for the year, I think.
So, anyways, while Frankie was here, we also looked at some suspension stuff. You know how my truck does that stanky leg thing on the inside tire?
Yes, I've had every time I've co-driven your car, someone has mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
So I think know about that.
Because of how
it does like this cripple thing.
Oh,
so
does it like
stanky leg, but
and like ideally you would get positive camber gain under droop, but because of the correlation between my control arms, when it goes into suspension droop, it actually gets negative camber again because the top arm is so much shorter.
Oh, really? So that as the travel goes, it actually ends up going more inward than outward still.
Yep. And then it's compounded by the orientation of the control arms, specifically the upper one. Has the pivot is so much not perpendicular to or parallel to the chassis that you get a crap ton of caster gain under droop as well.
So it
really does all kinds of wonky things.
The toe is probably doing some weird stuff. It toes
way in and it goes super negative camber, so it looks broken. But me and Frankie were talking about it, and if I just put some limiting straps on the suspension so that it will only droop like halfway.
And it would also try and keep the front end down, because if it's drooping and still touching the ground, then it's
limiting.
You're
straps?
Still traveling it.
So
same thing
basically,
that drag cars will do.
Like a bungee cord?
Kind of, no. Like
but stronger.
Like a 2-inch nylon ratchet strap. Just take a short section of that and put eyelets on each end and attach it to the frame and to the lower control arm so that it'll lock it.
Or you just weld an old piece of chain. That's the old school cables. Anything to keep the suspension going from all the way from like here to here. If you can stop it from going there, put a strap on it so it only goes to there.
Yep.
Then it's gonna try and keep the front end down more.
Because the upper control arms are what is normally the droop stop. And my upper control arms, me and the Speedway uppers, do not have a droop stop on them. So they actually, like, the suspension droop at the wheel is probably 3, maybe 4 inches farther than what standard normally is.
Yeah, so he's pretty much adding the opposite of a bump stop to his suspension. Yeah. It's a drag racing thing that they would do a lot to try and keep the front end down on their drag cars, because if the suspension keep on moving and the tires
if the
stay
suspension
down,
goes underneath the car and then you land back on top of it, well, you're not going to go very far.
Yeah. This way...
So you better put some bungee cords on it.
Because even if you're lifting it up and the springs are still working and it's still touching the ground, you get that extra lift. It's still drooping, still touching, but you put some straps on it, it can only travel so far to keep that front end down. So drag racers use a lot of limiting strap systems.
Or I buy that Ride Tech kit that I
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Did I send that to you?
I don't think so. I don't think.
There's someone
it's
selling
a full
a Ride
Tech
kit.
It's all the arms, upper and lower control arms, and a 3-link rear suspension and coilovers for $100.
Yeah.
So what are you waiting for? It should have been done yesterday.
Didn't you get your tax return already? Jesus.
Self-employed, man. I don't get a tax return.
Whatever.
If I'm lucky,
didn't
I
you
just
get your
don't
tax
have to pay
write-offs yet?
Yeah.
Jesus.
If I wasn't building a kitchen right now,
is that a full bottle when we started?
Yeah, it was.
I should catch up, I think.
You should.
I got another cold one in the fridge.
No, if we weren't in the middle of a kitchen remodel right now, I would definitely buy that suspension.
No one cares.
Kimberly cares.
But how much do you plan on spending on that? We still need to put a floor in this room.
It has a floor. There's plywood on the ground.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. I'm torn between just buying a readily available proven kit, something like a Ride Tech, or if I want to try and custom design my own stuff so that I can run wider wheels without having to have ridiculous spacers up front.
Yeah. I think you're better off, as I've said in the past, building the
Corvette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we said
join us in the 80s.
One of us. One of us. Well, you know what we also told him to do? We told him he should turbo it so we can have how many red turbo cars?
Right.
Because we
You
have
know what's wild?
Have you seen Ford?
The Cobalt's
ready?
Supercharged.
Boosted.
You're right.
Two Z's.
Two Z's.
My brother's E46 boosted now.
Yep,
E46. He's going to be running more with us, I think.
Yeah, throw him in there. Yep.
He's my brother. He's close enough to the group that he's acceptable.
And you know what? Dan's truck. It's an F-250 with a V10.
That's not boosted.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Right? I think we can get him there. That's 6.
My girlfriend's Beetle isn't black, but it is boosted, so...
Well, I can put a red stripe on it. I'm really good about mismatch.
We do really have a lot of turbos in this group.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we're smart.
Yeah. There's not really a whole lot of NAs.
Have you guys seen Richard Holdner's video where he turbocharges a L98?
I don't think so.
Okay, you have to explain what an L98 is.
And who this is.
You don't know who Richard
I know who
Holdner
Richard Holdner is.
I do not.
Richard Holdner is like god of testing every small block V8 there is.
That's probably why I don't know who he is.
No, he does a lot more than he does way more than just small blocks. He does a lot of that stuff, but he has a series on
the GM V6 for the Grand Prix and stuff.
Yeah,
which
3800s
literally worthless.
Yeah.
Nope, not based on the type of power numbers that he made on that stuff.
I disagree. It is worthless.
Can you easily swap it into anything?
How can I hook a transmission up to it?
Because that's a front-wheel drive engine, isn't it?
Just bolt it on, or use an adapter plate. They
yeah.
used the 38.
Oh yeah, no, I'll just throw a couple grand in it. For a fucking V6 engine that's complete shit.
If I remember correctly, it's the same transmission pattern as a 3400 or a 3100.
Which is what?
They use them in Camaros and Firebirds. And
which is
like
what? Is it like the 6-speed for the 4 cylinders and
T5s.
stuff? No, they're not T5s.
In 80s Firebirds and Camaros?
Oh,
I have no clue.
that you're talking about.
80s and 90s.
For the Grand Prix.
Yeah, they're in there sideways, but I'm pretty sure it still has the same bell housing pattern.
I'm going to say no thanks on this engine swap.
Why don't you look that up? Yeah, I am going to say no thanks on that engine swap. Anyways, but no.
We already know what the best
He's a good source for
He
anything.
turbocharged the TPI, and
source
it
for
made,
anything
it
small
made
block.
an astronomical amount of torque at like 2,500 RPMs.
I do know a guy that put a Precision 6062 on an Alero.
Yeah.
And he made, like, I don't know if he put on the dyno. I was actually talking to him earlier this morning at my dad's house. And he had Precision 6062 on an older Alero, rusted out. He thinks it made around 400 horsepower or so because it's a ridiculous size Precision turbo on that. He broke so many transmissions from the sounds of it. He's like, yeah, they didn't even like the stock power, so that's really the only thing I'd like to eat besides tires.
Right.
But I remember seeing this car around and being like, who would do this? Who has the idea of all the cars you can boost an Alero?
Right.
And I think they did a few cars like that around town because they work at a local repair shop. So they decided, hey, why not? And since HP Tuners works on most GM cars, they were able to tune it with HP Tuners, and they figured, for fun with this cheap car, let's see what can happen. And
Sure.
I guess he never really blew the engine out of it, so the engine actually took that boost. I don't remember what the Aleros have, if they have those 3800s or not, but
I think so. Yeah.
from the sounds of it, he abused it pretty well, and he just tore through transmissions more than other parts. But that car was hilarious. Anytime I would see it, the only thought in my head is, out of all cars, why? But at the same time, I've seen it, and it moves pretty quick, too.
Sure. Yep. So, it looks like they actually use the 3800 Series 2 in Firebirds and Camaros and things of that nature. So it'd be basically the same bolt pattern as a small block for bell housing.
From a forum from 2006.
You're talking about like 94 and up?
Newer, older, depends on...
That's what the 3800s would have been in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, T5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if Camaros ever come with those engines or Firebirds. Did they
3800s,
really?
yeah. That's what they had from
Is
the
that
V6
what the
cars.
V6s were?
Yep.
I don't think I ever worked on a V6 one. Or one that old to begin with.
Sure.
I think the only Camaro I ever really was under the hood of and drove was Catfish era Camaros with the LT V8.
Sure.
Which the spark plugs on those things are so annoying to change on those LT1s
Because
you need tiny hands. You
Oh,
think you
for-
need small hands for a Subaru, you need small hands for that thing.
For the Opti
'Cause you-
Spark, is that what
yeah.
you're talking about?
Yeah, those engines, the LT1s I think it was.
Yep.
Like, we had it on the lift, and I think I ended up doing half of them under the car and half of them above the car. I was like, this thing is so annoying to work on.
Yeah.
And the OptiSpark is garbage because when your water pump leaks, inevitably it leaks
Leaks
into the
on the
OptiSpark,
OptiSpark,
and then
and
the
it ruins
OptiSpark
it.
goes out.
And they're expensive.
And they're annoying to change because you got to get all the way in there because it's on the engine flat.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of annoying, but the car was fun. I think that was the first V8 car I ever drove. One of my buddies owned it, and I helped him fix it, and I was like, can I take this to homecoming? He's like, well, since you helped me fix it, sure, here you go. I'm like, that's pretty
Solid.
cool for my first V8 car to drive, you
Yeah.
know. It's not great, but for your first V8, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You really get to at least experience what torque feels like a little bit
Right.
for whatever they made. I'm not sure what those LT1s had.
the LT1s were
350 torque.
Be comparable to what my Z runs now.
What
It didn't.
what car was it again?
It was like Catfish Camaro era.
So it would have been
90s.
It would
I
have been
think.
like 1998 Camaro.
I just remember being like, wow, this thing's actually pretty quick off the line. 5.7 V8. Where is that horsepower? Yeah, I think the next year I took his. He has a Z31 also that I helped work on. I think the next year I took the Z31 to homecoming.
350 pound-feet of torque at 3,300 RPMs.
Okay,
So
that's pretty good.
moved pretty good. Yeah, the next year I took his Z31 that I helped with to homecoming again, and I think that's where I fell in love with the Z31.
Oh, okay.
Because that was the first time I ever drove a turbo car, and it was put together at least well enough. Stock ECU system, same thing, kind of as what I ran before with bolt-ons, and I was like, boost is fun. And after that, I started trying to find one here and there, and I got an RX-8 that I had for maybe a month with no engine, sold it, and I bought my first Z31 right after that.
Yeah, that boost is addictive because that's exactly what happened to me. I was my senior year of high school. I was looking for a 240 SX, and I got an agreement with my dad because I had a truck that we bought that I drove in high school. It was okay. You sell the truck, and whatever you sell the truck for, you can buy a car for. I was looking at 240 SXs.
Because everybody wants that.
Yeah,
that Nissan 240.
That's when they were like. That was when you could pick one up for like $2,000. And
before the drifters really got into
it was.
Before the big boom.
That's right at the beginning of the drift tax.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that would have been what year about?
2011, 2012.
So it was still drifting was new. It was becoming big, but
they were getting
the boom.
They
really
were getting
took off.
expensive, but
yeah.
If I would have bought a 240,
you would be doubled your money by now.
Yes, I would have.
But
as
would
compared
you
to a
have had as much
Z31.
fun?
But literally, I had no idea the Z31
Don't worry,
existed.
the drifters are coming for your pieces of junk.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
literally
I
had no
hate it.
idea that Z31s existed, and then my dad sent me one, and I Craigslist that and was
"What
like,
is
"Why
that?"
don't you go look at this?" And I was like, "Okay." So I went and looked at
This
one.
weird, ugly Nissan.
Well, and it was like an '88.
Also, it was the good body style.
No,
Yes.
it was the good front end, bad rear end.
Just the tits.
Just the tits. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And then my dad came across another one. I was like, well, why don't you go look at this one?
Oh, that's
And
right.
it
Because
was
you had one before the 86.
Yes, I did. Show a picture of that.
Which is sketchy as all get out.
The
Wasn't that one,
Batmobile.
like, primer black.
It pretty much, yes,
it looks
was.
like it caught on fire black.
It was primer black over the gold that it was. And guy took me out for driving it, and I was like, oh my god. Because he had a boost controller and everything, which the boost controller I'm still running now. I'm going to admit it is running like 10 psi. And just the amount of boost, it was like, oh man, this is so awesome. And so we bought it and love the thing. Riddled with issues, tons of issues. I was gonna take it to an autocross, and it was slightly leaking brake fluid from a brake caliper. So we decided, all right, we'll just try putting some RTV in there and stuff to like seal it up.
You know, high school days of I don't really know what I'm doing, so we're just trying to fix this.
This was with our buddy with the SRT4.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, let's just try this. This will help seal it up.
You gotta make mistakes
Literally-
to learn.
Literally the morning before we were gonna go to the autocross, because we did the RTV the night before, and it was like, all right, let's see if it
it'll
held
dry
up.
overnight.
Yeah. Let's see if it held up. And I get in the car and I do a couple big brake pushes, and then I'll push it one time and it just goes all over the floor. And our RTV seal didn't break. The brake line literally busted because it was so rusted out. So like, oh god, thank God we never took this car to the track,
Yeah,
because
you
it just would have been,
full speed, no brake.
yeah. And it was it wasn't a great car. Didn't quite realize it.
It was basically Swiss cheese.
Yeah,
Was
it
it?
was.
Yeah.
It literally was to the point where my dad was like, listen.
It was probably a Wisconsin daily through winters then.
Yeah, it was. Because it got to the point where my dad told my mom, he's like, listen,
This
we
isn't safe.
gotta help him buy another chassis because he's gonna kill himself in this car.
Yeah, that is
And that's where the red chassis is, which was a great,
not as Swiss cheese.
No, it was not a Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
The car I had, the black car, was 145,000 miles when I bought it.
So low mileage, but just
The red car
rust
that I
got
have
to
now was 195,000 miles when we bought it. And it was literally like
9-day difference between the two.
yes,
Yeah.
the only rust that red one had was on the rear fenders, which is pretty standard.
underneath the molding in the middle of the door for some reason. Because you got those little rust spots on the door that aren't through.
Oh yeah, right in the center of the drawer where
that was the rubber stripping and stuff. But like the actual structural, like the frame rails and everything, were
solid,
perfect.
Subframe mounting areas not
Yep,
rusted.
no.
The wheel well's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, because they always get that little bit in the very back by the rear quarters behind the wheels,
which it did have.
Pretty
But
normal,
we
but
took
not
care
structural.
of. We took care of right away.
And by took care of, you mean you cleaned it off with a wire wheel and sprayed some self-etching
No,
primer on it?
we cut it out.
At Alice Chalmers
No.
Orange.
No, we cut it out.
Close enough red.
We cut it out. We welded in some new metal, and then
Isn't that what I just said?
Yeah.
and not else.
Well, other than the new metal part.
Yeah.
It's Chrysler
The
orange.
same.
No, it is new metal, but it's Chrysler orange.
There's various Chrysler orange spots on your car.
Yes, there is.
But it's better than rusty
And
holes.
The best part about top tip for Z31s, if you got a red car and you spray Chrysler orange across it, people just think it's the sun.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, "Oh wow, that's so clean," and it's like, no,
It looks great in pictures.
It's not. I don't know what you're talking about. It's the most fucked up car I've ever seen.
I think my front fenders are a Mercedes color because that was the closest we could match off of my gas door at the paint shop. We're like, I think this looks close. It's a race car. I don't really care if it doesn't match perfectly. For single stage paint, this is good enough for me to start with.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at a point where I know we need to end.
No.
Yes, no, we're gonna get to a point where we're too
We
long.
haven't even talked about my Subaru yet.
I know we haven't talked about
It
your
hasn't
Subaru.
blown up.
That's great. That's another episode. But Tyler, do you have any Facebook Marketplace picks?
Oh,
Marketplace.
I
picks.
forgot we were doing this, man.
Ah,
we're gonna feature like the most wackadoodle things you can find on Facebook Marketplace.
All right.
Ooh.
I'm gonna bring my laptop up here. So these aren't necessarily all Facebook
Man,
Marketplace.
I could have found some interesting motorcycles that I've been looking
Yes.
at lately.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Oh my goodness, what is this?
This
Pantera.
was a
This is Bring a Trailer.
a Coyote. Yeah, this
This is
is
not Marketplace.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
I went a little off script. Coyote powered 1972 De Tomos. How do you say that?
De Tomosa.
De Tomosa Pantera.
Do you like the wheels and the white on that?
Oh yeah,
Pantera?
De Tomasa.
yeah, just
know,
greatly. That was one. I was
I've
like, that's great.
I've
That's
always liked the way Panteras look too.
Right.
That's one of
Very-
those cars that it's like,
Oh.
even if it's not great, you really want to own one because they look just amazing.
Exactly. The next thing that I found was this Audi S6.
Looks normal.
It looks normal. The big thing about it, though, is that I want to say it. Yes, it does. It has the same V10 that is in an Audi R8,
R8. Yep.
but it's a sedan for 11
That
grand.
would be such a fun car.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And then lastly was a 1992
Oh my
Suzuki
God.
Samurai Jill convertible. Because who doesn't love a little 3-cylinder turbo?
It is turbo? Oh my goodness.
It actually has a 3-cylinder turbo?
I believe so.
Really? I didn't know they did such a thing.
Neither did I. Samurais are great. Anything little and 4x4
Yeah.
are the most fun cars to drive around ever. My brother's first car.
I'm sorry. This is probably a 4-cylinder.
Oh,
Looking at the engine bay pic now.
yeah. Anything little is fun. My brother's first vehicle was a Isuzu Amigo. Same thing. Tiny chassis, little like canvas back that was a convertible.
Yep.
Little 4x4s are so much fun. If you've never had one,
Isuzu was
it's
all
fun.
about the cultural appropriation in the early 90s.
Yeah.
They had the Amigo, the Hombre.
Yeah, I almost bought an Impulse for my first car too.
Yeah.
But I was too new to working on cars, and they said it had a rear main leak, which
Oh, sure.
nowadays I'd be like, that's fine, it just needs a seal. But back then I didn't know enough about cars to pull a transmission and do
Right.
that. I'm like, I kind of wish I would have got the Impulse over the Chevette.
Yeah.
And then lastly was this
A Typhoon.
a GMC Jimmy Typhoon with 44,000 miles.
It's a unicorn of a vehicle
It
today.
is, but absolutely epic.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a new segment we're going to try and do is Facebook Marketplace.
And maybe we'll give
Or Marketplace.
give a little bit more care to actually talking about them
Yeah.
next time when we're a little bit more prepared for it.
Yes.
Yeah, you
but-
didn't even remember. It was
Nope, I
coming.
forgot all
Nope.
about it.
And at
We
this
just
point,
talked about it like, what, 3-4 days ago?
yeah. And at this point, I know we are going way over time.
Oh, who has a time limit? Come on.
Yeah.
Uh,
the
the
most
best ones
popular
are
podcasts
longer.
in the world are the longest ones.
The most popular
That is-
podcast is
that's
3
wonderful.
hours on average.
That's wonderful, but if we go over too much time, we have to pay for it.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So,
Need to get on Spotify soon.
Yeah, how do we do that anyways?
I'm not sure, but that would be cool.
we might
Do
be.
you just have to like submit and apply?
No, it works.
You're gonna turn into
I'm
a
not gonna go
SoundCloud
into it with the-
podcast.
Anyways.
Anyways.
I'm not going to go into it
Anyways.
here. Thank you for joining us
We
tonight.
got 30 seconds. We gotta get out.
Yeah, we gotta get out of here. We got shit to do. So, thank you again for joining us for Hammer with Cars.
Keep the shiny side up.
All right, there we go.
I'm not gonna blow up my Subaru, but we'll be back to talk about it.
All righty.
Close it up.